All right, this is really a continuation of what we've been doing. So this would be class three of the series. So class one was overall how to build a business from 0 to 100K in 12 months. Class two was how to generate leads, which we focused on Facebook. And then this class is more about lead conversion and follow up. We talked about it a bit last week, and I got the ChatGPT widget now. We talked a bit last week about the importance of lead conversion because what a lot of people make the mistake of is generating leads and allowing the system to follow up, like emails, texts, and things like that, and then wonder why they don't sell houses. Over the last decade or so, there's been a lot of innovation. Text has been more prevalent. AI, we now have AI, but nothing replaces a phone call. Those that have worked with me for a few months would probably see that emails and texts are great, but the phone call is what converts the lead. The phone call is what gets you the contracts. We really want to focus on being good at that because otherwise you're wasting money on marketing without effective follow-up. So what we're going to talk about is when to call leads, how many times to call the leads, what to say when you call, and then we might do a little bit of role play. This is all stuff that I've done in the past. So there's no fluff. This is all things that I've done the last 10, 11 years. I share my actual numbers, my actual scripts, all that stuff. So lead conversion, first of all, you want to figure out how much time you need to spend calling leads. With proper tracking, you can track and predict and scale. You want to plan your day calling leads first. Andrew and I had that discussion this morning when he called me talking about files. And I said, let's work on this after 10, because what's most important is calling new leads. If you don't prioritize calling your leads first and you start just working your files or working with your clients, you might get those clients to the finish line, but next month you're going to have no clients and no closings. So what I always recommend is plan your day and call your leads first. If you start work at 8, call leads until 9 or 10 and don't do anything else. Turn off all notifications, don't answer your phone, don't answer emails, focus on those 2 hours just on your lead follow-up and lead conversion. In most cases, there is no such thing as a real estate emergency. There's nothing that can't wait until 10 o'clock. So you might get emails and texts from other agents, but you can ignore them until 10 o'clock and just focus on this stuff. You want to be consistent. Planning your day is important to be consistent. That way you avoid that income roller coaster that a lot of us have experienced. And then just know what to say when you're calling these leads. So knowing your numbers, and this is based on my actual numbers I tracked. I used to track every single dial for years to see what the trends were. This is what I knew from my own numbers, where it would take approximately an hour to make 50 dials. So if I knew I blocked out 1 hour, I know I'm making about 50 phone calls because most people don't answer the phone. I know about every 10 dials I make, I'm going to have a conversation with somebody. By contact, I don't mean somebody that says hello and then hangs up. I mean somebody that you have a conversation with about buying a home. Every 10 dials, you should be able to have one conversation with somebody that wants to buy a house, whether it's now or in the future. It takes about 10 conversations to book one appointment. I actually thought about 7 or 8, but just to be conservative, we'll say 10 contacts to book one appointment. The goal on these always, and this is loan officers and agents, both of you, your goal is to book appointments. A loan officer, maybe right now is your appointment. You're trying to get that loan application on the phone right now. Otherwise, if it's not a good time, you're trying to schedule an appointment to do that loan application. For an agent, you want to book a buyer consultation so that you can meet with the buyer, give them your presentation, and get them to sign a buyer broker agreement to work with you exclusively. So that's your goal. And that's what I'm talking about when I say appointment. Loan app for loan officers, buyer consultation for realtors. I've always had a hard rule where I will not work with a buyer unless I've met with them, signed into a buyer agreement, and got them pre-qualified. Without those things, I don't show them a house or even send them a house for that matter. I also know for every 3 appointments I set, 2 are going to happen. I know that I'm going to get no-showed. I know people are going to cancel. I just factor that into my numbers. It is what it is. And I know that for every 3 appointments I go on, I'm going to get 1 closing. Either the buyer doesn't sign, or the buyer doesn't qualify after all, or the buyer changes their mind and decides not to buy. Over the long term, you'll find every 3 buyers that you meet with, you'll get 1 closing out of it. So if you want to close 2 a month, you want to meet with 6 buyers a month. So knowing your numbers, to get to 14 closings, which is about $100,000 a year in commission, you need to go on 42 appointments. This isn't an entire year. To go on 42, you need to book 63 appointments. You need to speak to 630 people or 6,300 dials or 126 hours. So it sounds like a lot when you break it down like that. But if you break it down in shorter time periods, It's only 3.5 appointments set per month. So it's only 52 conversations a month, and it's only 525 dials per month. On a week, you're booking one appointment a week. You're talking to 15 people per week. You're making 150 dials per week. But you break it down by the day, this is your bare minimum to be able to close those 14 deals a year and make $100,000. So you want to make sure you're speaking to a minimum of 3 people per day, which is going to take you an average of 30 dials per day, which is going to take you about 36 minutes per day. So what we talked about 2 weeks ago, I think we said $10 a day in marketing if you're going to run Facebook ads, and then 36 minutes per day to make $100,000 a year. Now you tell me a job where you can make that kind of a living by focusing on small of a budget and that much time to generate your business. This is all it takes. I would start my day at 8 o'clock. I would work from 8 to 9, just lead calls. There would be days where I book 0 appointments. There'd be days where I book 5 appointments. It just all averages out, but I was consistent with it. That's why I was able to sell 50, 60, 70 homes a year. About $300 a month on Facebook, assuming about $5 a lead, which for the last 10 to 11 years is a pretty good number to estimate. So the phone call itself, you want to make sure you're calling these leads often, calling these leads multiple times per day. You want to be persistent. You want to know what to say and when to follow up. These are very crucial to have systematized. These are some numbers that were pulled from the MIT lead response study. MIT did a study years ago that's still relevant today. You can Google it if you want to see it, MIT lead response study, and you'll see the whole report. This is for calling leads or cold calling. If you're calling a lead and that lead comes into your system, you are this much more likely to get that person on the phone if you call within the first hour as if you wait 6, 7 hours. So if you get a lead at 8 o'clock in the morning and you're not calling it till 2 in the afternoon, you have a fraction of a chance of if you try to call in that first hour. Excuse me. Breaking it down even further, if you don't call that lead in the first 5 minutes, your chance of getting them on the phone drops dramatically. So it drops in about a quarter by waiting 10 minutes. It drops a quarter of that waiting 15 minutes. And by the time you wait an hour, your chances of getting them on the phone are almost 0. That's why we always talk about speed to lead being crucial. And that's why we have systems in place where leads are getting emails and texts as soon as they come in, because we want to make sure we're getting them within 5 minutes. Ideally, you're calling them within 5 minutes, but at the very least, they're getting emails and texts as the leads come in our system. Time of the day. So there are better times of the day than not. You can see there's 2 really clear times of the day that's best to call leads, and that's between 8 to 10 and between 4 to 6. Now, I wouldn't say, based on this chart, don't call leads at 11 o'clock, but if you only have time to call between 11 and 1, you're still going to get people on the phone. You'll just find better success at 8 to 10 and 4 to 6. This one is one of the most important ones. A lot of people make the mistake when a lead comes in, they'll call once, twice, or 3 times and give up. You're not going to be successful if you do that. This MIT lead response study says at least 6 calls. By the 6th call, you've had a 90% chance of getting that person on the phone. I was always 8 to 10 minimum, but I was also a buy or die person. I always find if they're actively engaged on my website, if they're actively engaged emails and texts, I'm going to call them until they tell me not to, or they buy a house. One example, I've given some of you guys this before, is I had a buyer came into my system looking for houses. I would call every single day and she would hang up on me every single day. I just made it a game because she was still actively looking at houses. She never told me to stop calling, so I was going to keep calling. After over 100 phone calls, she called me back one day and said, "Hey, we want to list our house for sale in Surprise and buy a new one in Litchfield Park." By being persistent, I double-ended the listing, sold them a new house in Litchfield Park, and I think I've refinanced them twice since then. Persistence pays off. If they don't tell me to stop calling, I'm not going to stop calling. If they tell me they bought a house, then maybe I'll stop at that point. If you think about it, I'm sure all of you have filled out a form on a website before, or looking at cars or whatever. You fill out the form and you instantly regret putting your phone number because you know you're going to get some phone calls. You just ignore them. But then the moment you're ready to pull the trigger on that sale, buy the house, buy the car, whatever it is, you're either going to answer the phone or you're going to call one of those people back because they were persistent and you know who they are and they're top of mind. So my thought process was I want to be top of mind. Online leads are notoriously 6 to 12 months out. You'll get some that are ready to go right now. But when they're ready to go 6 months after they came in, I want to make sure I'm the only person still calling them. And I find that happens very often. So just keep calling them and being persistent. This is the script we use for home buyers and home sellers on the real estate side. So loan officers, this is good information for you guys, and you might get some knowledge out of this too. Some of this stuff is incorporated into our scripts as well on the loan side. But I spent years and thousands of dollars coaching with Craig Proctor, and this is what they call the universal callback script. No matter where the lead comes from, this is the script. Doesn't matter if it's a buyer, doesn't matter if it's a seller, doesn't matter if it's a Facebook ad, Google ad, Zillow ad, open house ad, it doesn't matter. This script is universal and works for every kind of lead that comes in. So this is the importance of knowing what to say. Nisha, you've shared this with everybody, right? The agents?
Yes, they all have it.
Okay. This is what I've used for years and years, this exact script. I don't change it. I just use this exact script. And this is where I saw my success and my conversion numbers. So it's broken down into multiple categories. I don't use Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I'll use their first name. So I'll say, hi, is Andrew there? Typically, that's who's answering because it's a cell phone. And then the only thing that changes on the script is this next paragraph. It's going to be based on what information they requested. And your goal with this is to get them to say yes to whatever it is. So we're doing a lot with veterans. So we have our military home purchase program. So what I would say is, hi, Andrew, this is Mark with Veteran Home Advantage. The reason I'm calling is I received your request for information about our military home purchase program, and I emailed that to you. Is that okay? And you want to ask them, is that okay? You want to get a yes. It's a trial close. So they ask for something, you want to confirm that you sent it to them and make sure they got it. So you want to get a yes. We'll do sales training in the future, but with trial closes, you want to get a series of yeses throughout your call. So when you get to the end, it's easier to get a yes for the appointment. This is super important. Left side is buyer, right side is seller. Next is qualifying questions. And these are important because this is where you want to figure out if this is somebody you want to meet with, if they're actually a buyer, and if they're within the time frames. My general rule of thumb is if they're looking to buy or sell in the next 6 months, I want to meet with them now. If they're more than 6 months out, I want to follow up with them. So I want to make a good follow-up system so that when they are ready to go, I have them in my CRM ready to go. Are you planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months? They may or may not give you an answer here. They may be specific, they may be not. What you want to find out is if they're a year out, you want to know this up front. If they're a year out, you're going to set them up on a follow-up plan.
So on the real estate side, we've went over this portion of the script, and this is what's extremely important. And it's also important that these answers are what you put in your CRM for these clients, because it's going to help, especially when talking to the loan officers and making sure that they know exactly what's going on as well. Do you currently rent or do you own a home? It helps you to understand the time frame of when they're going to be able to purchase, because sometimes they don't even know that. They don't know that my rent is up in June, that I should be looking to purchase in April. Are you planning on staying in the area or moving out of the area? Very similar to a question for the loan officers, because now you know what area that you want to start looking in. That way you can plan ahead. If you were to move, when do you think that might be? Are they looking to move right now? Are they looking to move 6 months from now? All those things will depend on when you meet up with them. This number 5 is extremely important, especially with the new NAR ruling and everything that's going on. Do you have a realtor to help you when the time is right? On the loan side, I know that's a question that you all should be asking as well, considering that they are trying to join the Veteran Home Advantage program. So we want to make sure that they are using our realtors, because it becomes difficult. And I know, Andrew, you can attest to this when you're working with a buyer that is not working with our agents, and they're not always willing to adhere to all the things that our agents would do for the client, right? On the agent side, you want to make sure they haven't already signed paperwork with another agent. If that is the case, then everything you're doing is for naught. A big part of what I teach is your time is your money when it comes to real estate. You want to make sure this is not one of those time wasters we talked about when we went over time management. If they are not in a position to purchase right away, would it be okay if you followed up with them later? When would be the best time to call back? And that's the best question to ask, no matter if it is something that they want to purchase right away or even if it's long term, because you always want to end every conversation with knowing when is the next time you are going to speak with that client. In high level, there is the task bar. You click on that, set a task for yourself. And that way, when you're logging in that morning, you can look and see, okay, what do I have to do today before I start calling my new clientele? You want to make sure that you're setting your day up correctly. You always want to make sure that once you end that conversation, you have your next one already set up. Whether for agents, it's your buyer consultation meeting and you're setting that appointment up, or you're setting up to go show houses, or you're just setting up that follow appointment from when you've done their pre-qualification.
All right, so then this is the close. So this is where you're trying to get the appointment. So at this point, they've requested information, you've sent them the information, you figured out they're going to buy in the next 3 to 6 months. They don't have a realtor, they don't have a house to sell. So now you want to meet with them. So the point of this part of the script is they have to have a reason to want to meet with you. They're not going to say, if you say, okay, great, let's meet. Why? You have to give them some value. You have to give them a reason to meet with you. So what we do is we call it our home hunter service. So what you're going to do is you're going to offer them a daily update of homes that match their home buying criteria from all real estate companies. Our list will include bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, and other distress sales. It's a free service, and you're never obligated to buy a home would that interest you. Your goal is to get a yes so you can close for the appointment. When we talk about this, you're going to obviously set them up on MLS Drip. If you're going to do a good job for your buyers, you're also hunting for properties for them too. You're going to look for FSBOs. You're going to look for expires. You're going to look for company-owned properties. You're going to look for builder closeouts. So this is what you're going to tell them that you're going to do. So they're not going to get just homes online. You're going to actually hunt for houses for them. If you have a buyer that wants to look in a specific neighborhood, we may even just send a letter to every house in that neighborhood to see if anyone's looking to sell. So you're not going to be like every other agent. We just set them on MLS Drip and forgetting it. You're going to actually hunt and find them a house. So that's what this is for. Would you like me to mail you daily updates of homes that match your home buying criteria from all real estate companies? Our list includes bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, and other distress sales. It's a free service, and of course, there's no obligation to buy a home. Would that interest you? You're going to get a yes almost every single time to this. And once they say yes, that's when you're going to close for the appointment. So great, when can we get together for about 20 minutes so I can take down exactly what you're looking for? What's best is to give them a couple options at this point. When can we get together for about 20 minutes so I can take down exactly what you're looking for? I've got time tomorrow afternoon around 3, or would Wednesday morning work better? So always give them 2 options to try and get it nailed down. Most of the time, if you get them to say yes to the home hunter service, you're going to book the appointment. And then this last paragraph is just a common objection that you'll get from people. So they'll say, I can just tell you on the phone what I'm looking for. Rather than send you hundreds of homes which may or may not match your criteria, or missing out on the perfect one, if we get together for about 20 minutes, I can take down exactly what you're looking for. Then when you meet and do your buyer consultation, you're going to spend time digging into the weeds of what they're looking for, areas, price points, what kind of countertops, get really into the weeds, give the presentation, get them signed to a buyer broker agreement. Makes sense. If you're working with a home seller, you're going to go on the right-hand side. So you're going to offer them a free market evaluation to determine what their house would sell for. I also can give you tips on what to do and what not to do to sell your home for the most amount of money. And we can go over all the various closing costs you incur so you'll know exactly what you have left in your pocket after all expenses. It's free of charge, obligates you to nothing. Does that sound helpful? When's a good time to get together, days or evenings? At this point, you should be practicing the script every single week. Go word for word as much as possible. As you get used to it, you'll start to internalize it. The bottom one, we're going to implement this soon, is a Market Watch newsletter. So it's just basically a newsletter that goes out every month to keep you up to date and keep you in contact with them. Nisha, I think the answer to this, if they say, I want to move in a year, when are you going to call them back?
Not in a year. You want to call them back probably 6 months.
If they want to move in 2 years, call them in 1 year.
1 year.
What if they say, I want to move in 6 months?
Then you definitely want to start the ball rolling with them now, because they probably really mean 3 months.
Book the appointment. 6 months or less, book the appointment. So always, whenever they say call me in X amount of time, always cut it in half. If you don't do that, what you're going to find is when you call them, they've already bought a house. If they say call me in a year and you call them in a year, you're too late. So always cut it in half. You want to get them at the beginning of that 6-month window to book the appointment and get them in meeting in person with you. Make sense? Any questions on any of that? When you book the appointment, your goal is to get in front of them. You want to meet them in person. If they're out of state, you want to do it on Zoom, but ideally in person. So you want to book the appointment as soon as possible. You want to bring them into your office if possible, which we do have an office in Gilbert. The Barrett headquarters is in Gilbert. You can meet them at a title company, coffee shop, or for sellers, meet them at their house. For buyers, if you feel safe, I'd caution you on meeting with people at their house if you can avoid it because of safety reasons. For sellers, it's hard to avoid it. For buyers, think about safety first. And then expect no-shows and cancellations. It's gonna happen. People are gonna no-show you. People are gonna cancel at the last minute. Don't let that beat you up. Sometimes you might have 2 or 3 appointments booked that day and all of them cancel or no-show. Don't let that bring you down because it averages out. You're gonna get your closing because you'll have those days where every appointment shows up. You'll have those days where everybody's canceling. Just keep going and keep moving forward and everything averages out. Did you see similar, like about 1/3 would cancel a no-show?
Yes, absolutely. And what I was also going to say is that when you are setting your meeting space, making sure that you are double checking where you're meeting, because a lot of the coffee shops have changed and now they
Oh
only have
yeah.
outdoor. You just want to make sure that wherever you're saying that you're going to meet at, you've also done your due diligence to make sure that it has everything that you need when you are meeting up, like AC during the summertime. That's going to be extremely important too. I'm a firm believer when I talk sales, something that I told every single class, some will, some won't. So you have to move on and know that some people are not going to show up.
If you find that you have a high flip rate, then it's something that we need to work on. This is why it's very important to track your numbers because it could be something you're saying in the script. It could be something you're doing between the appointment. So you always want to track these numbers and you can just do a simple Excel spreadsheet. I use a system that costs like $30 a month to track it, but you could go as simple as just building an Excel spreadsheet and tracking it. We can probably pull reports and track it one way or another, but definitely expect that 1/3 are going to cancel a no-show. At the appointment, you're going to have a presentation with USPs, and we have a presentation for you if you don't have it already. PowerPoint, hard copy if you want to do it, but you want to give them a reason why they want to work with you over anybody else. I always just use a PowerPoint presentation either on my iPad or my laptop. It would take about 20 minutes to go through it. I've never had somebody say no to me at a buy agreement. The only time I haven't walked away with a signed agreement is if I found out they already had an agent, where I'll just cancel the meeting and wish them luck. If you give a good presentation, you're going to get a yes every single time. Nisha, what was your numbers like in that regard?
I absolutely agree with that. I never met a buyer that I couldn't close because it's relationship sales. You want to spend your first 15, 20 minutes building that rapport with them, finding out exactly what they're looking for. And that way, by the time you're doing your actual presentation, sometimes they even stop halfway through and are like, yes, let's get the ball rolling. Let's get started with this.
And then always bring your buyer broker agreement. We have our own VIP buyer agreement that we use. Give the presentation. At the end of the presentation, get a yes from them, and then pull out the agreement for them to sign. We'll do a whole training on that one as well. So this is why it's important to measure your results to predict your business. You want to know what kind of income you can expect in the next 6 months or a year. You want to be able to predict that. So the way you're going to know is to track it. You want to be able to scale your business. If I'm spending 36 minutes a day on the phone and I'm closing 1 closing a month, you know exactly what you have to do if you want to have 2 closings a month or 3 closings a month or 4 closings a month. By tracking that numbers, you're able to scale it to whatever level that you want. By tracking it, you're also able to troubleshoot. If you have a low contact to appointment rate, work on scripts or maybe on the time of day that you're calling these leads. If you have a high no-show rate, work on the follow-up after the appointment's set. Maybe you're booking it too far out. For real estate agents, if you book an appointment more than 48 hours out, your chances of it no-showing or canceling are through the roof. You want to book the appointment as soon as possible. I've even booked appointments same day. If I call somebody at 8 o'clock in the morning and they're willing to meet with me that afternoon, I'm going to meet with them that afternoon while they're hot. If you find that somebody says, let's meet next Tuesday, great, put on your calendar, but expect that they're going to cancel. Your follow-up between now and next Tuesday have to be stellar to make sure that happens. And you want to schedule a call Monday to confirm that the appointment's going to happen. Then again, low contact rate, try calling at a different time. If you're calling at 8 to 10 every day, you're not getting many people on the phone, try 4 to 6, try 10 to 12. Try different times a day until you're able to do it. Try multiple times a day. Andrew, what's my favorite thing to help get people to answer their phone? Double tap. On your initial call them if they don't answer. Hang up, immediately call them right back again, and you'll find your contacts almost double. I know when I first was told to do that, I was like, I don't want to piss people off by doing that, but very rare have I gotten somebody upset that I've called them twice in a row. Go with it. You'll find people that are friendly, and you'll book more appointments and sell more houses or loans. So these are what you want to measure. I would just have a piece of paper and write it down: dials, contacts, appointments. And I'll put a tick every time I'm calling leads. So dial, conversation, appointment booked, and I would track that and maybe put in a spreadsheet later on. Track how many contacts do appointments, how many people you speak to book an appointment. If you find that it's taking you 15 to 20, then we need to work on your scripts because there's something going on there. If you find that none of your appointments are showing up, we got to work on that. If you're more than 1/3 are canceling or no-showing, there's something that we got to fix in the process to improve that. And if you find that you're going on appointments and they're not signing the agreement, we got to work on your presentation. There's something going on there. And then even as far as how many people have you signed to a buyer agreement that actually turned into a commission check? If we find that number is low, what are we doing after they sign that agreement between getting them pre-approved, getting them into showings? Like, what can we do to improve that? So track all of these numbers on a daily basis. Andrew mentioned this the other day. There's some days where Andrew's getting nobody answer, and there's some days where he can only get through 5 phone calls in an hour because everybody's answering. It always averages out. So on those bad days when nobody answers, don't feel beat up and not do it the next day, because the next day everybody's going to answer. So just track it and keep doing it, and you'll find that it always averages out. Again, this is some numbers from myself, 2017, 2018, and 2019. These are exact numbers that I did. You can see it's pretty standard. 13.7. So what's that? 1 out of every 8 conversations I booked an appointment with, something like that. It's pretty consistent year over year. Number of dials, pretty close to 10%. Sometimes a little bit lower, but pretty close. So at 10 dials to have 1 contact. Contacts per hour. On average, 5 or 6 conversations per hour. And this is 2 entire years I averaged out doing that by tracking these numbers. Ignore these, but pay attention to these. And you'll see the same thing. And you'll also notice that I did not spend as much time as I tell you guys to spend on the phone, and I still had a lot of success. 117 hours on the phone, that's only about 2 hours a week on the phone. I was low. But in 2018, I think I sold 40 houses. By doing the bare minimum on the phone calls, you're going to be successful.
I just wanted to add, I absolutely love the double tap because I've gotten a lot of people on that second call. So I would have never thought of that. I like the takeaways. And then I like the fact that the setting up that appointment does help, but the double tap, genius. It's been working in my favor.
Yeah, it works well.
Yes, it works in my favor. Because I'm like, oh, you don't want to answer the first time? Don't worry about it. Call back.
Hey, Derek,
I can tell you all too from
Derek,
looking at the notes,
takeaways.
Jamie is notorious. She double taps like every day that when she's making phone calls, just to ensure that she's getting someone on the phone.
Stay consistent, ups and downs. It's a real thing. I had months where back when I was out selling houses, I would have 7, 8 closings one month, and then the next month I would have 0 or 1. And it was always because I was so busy working my active files, I wasn't following up with new leads. So that's why I always recommend ignore your emails, ignore your calls, ignore your texts until you get your hour or 2 of lead calls done first, and then start putting out fires.
Yes. It was actually something that you and I talk about all the time, Mark, which is making sure that you're walking away and not just in a buyer presentation, but even when I'm talking to agents, when's the next time we'll be having a conversation? implementing that will become second nature when you're doing it more often, not just with this, but with life in general.
My wife laughed because she overheard this training one day. Wait a minute, you did that to me. Because every time we were on the first date, before the first date was over, the second one was already booked, and so on. So it works in every aspect of your life. Always have that next appointment booked. That's it. So we will end this call, and if nobody's got any questions, and then hopefully you guys got some stuff out of it that you can use in your business. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.